Okay, so hello everyone. This is a one of the last of the frequent streams for the Civilization Empires weekly. As I said in the previous video, this would be monthly. So this would be the last of the weekly occurrences. And today I'm joined with Joz.
Hello.
Hello, and yep. Today, as I said, today we've got Jaws, and we're going to be talking a bit about the Spanish Empire, um, and probably a bit more sort of focus. We're going to be sort of covering, um, like we've done in previous ones, the sort of historical, I wouldn't say lies, but sort of like half truths that people with political motives will tell, um, and lacking context, and that's something um, which I think has gone well, sort of in the previous streams when we talked about the British Empire and such. Um, and so the first one we're going to sort of talk about is, I guess we talk about Christopher Columbus because um, he was obviously an Italian who came from Genoa, and he was hired by the King and Queen of Spain after he went to Portugal, if I remember correctly, to search for passage westwards uh, towards for Japan and the Far
I,
East.
I believe he had a Portuguese wife, I want to say. So I think that's why he was in Portugal. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So
Yeah.
he crossed into the Caribbean, didn't he, from Portugal? And I guess, stepping back slightly, I think his discovery of, of America is credited with that. Is probably the most important event since the Ice Age. I want to say. The link, because obviously the Native Americans were cut off from the rest of humanity. So the linking together of all the main, I don't know what the word is, types of human, I suppose, genetically on the planet. That's the first time that we'd seen them since the Ice Age.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is when it comes to, because obviously one of the sort the topic that gets you shouted down at the moment by the sort of current political elite is if you use the word New World and the Americas, the discovery, because obviously you get back from some smarmy git on Twitter saying, "Oh, well, the Americas wasn't discovered; they already had natives living there." And I think that is the point that the native population were very fortunate to develop such advanced societies without without the wheel. Um, I know the Incas, they were very much lucky because they didn't, and the Aztecs, they didn't have the uh, horses, the cattle, the sort of building blocks that civilizations, like say in the Crescent, um, or in the Mediterranean world, um, and later on down the road, that were fortunate to have like the ox and all that sort of stuff. Um, and so yes, as you said, that these people were very much isolated. If you compare the sort of trading networks like the Silk Road, where you have between Europe and Asia, and even Africa to a lesser extent as well.
Yes,
So yeah,
exactly. So I suppose even though they were worlds apart, civilizations like the Romans and the ancient Chinese were somewhat aware of each other, whereas there was no way they could have been aware of the South American empires like Incas, Aztecs, Mayans. That
yeah,
even if they didn't physically know that they were there, they were at least trading with them, not directly.
yeah, yeah. I mean, they wouldn't when it especially comes to the Central and South American uh, native peoples and civilizations. Yes, up until um, Christopher Columbus and that sort of the early Spanish colonization of what's now Haiti, and what's I think the island is called. They would have called it Hispaniola, and Cuba. They were completely unaware of the the size of the Americas as a continent. Because I believe even Christopher Columbus, he still believed that it was still um, the mainland was still several collection of islands. I don't think it was until
Yes.
sometime later that it became evident that in fact it wasn't a set of islands; it was actually a continent.
Yes, but
Quite
wasn't there some? I think this is a bit later on. We might be getting ahead of ourselves here a bit. But wasn't there some treaty between, I believe, Spain and Portugal where they split up the Americas based on that exemption, and they gave, I think, Spain everything further west than the certain line, and that only took up a small section of the coast in the east. So Portugal got kind of stiff there.
yes. You had it was a papal edict, which was signed by uh, I know I well I think it was Pope Alexander the it was the Borgia Pope in 1500, and he signed the put this parallel line where on east side of because a lot of this was centered around Brazil at the time because one of the first mainland colonization um, bit of the Americas was done by the Portuguese
Yes.
along the coast there, and it was, I guess you could say, like a boundary through what's now, I guess you would say, the Amazon. East of it belongs to Portugal, and then west belongs to Spain. But obviously, this boundary included never um, was never upheld. The treaty was never upheld because Spain obviously went into places, as we said, like we'll say later, the Inca territories, which under the treaty would have technically belonged to Portugal. So um, it, it didn't. It didn't. Then it was never upheld as a treaty in any meaningful way.
Yes, I think it was just quite funny that they put the line there, then discovered an entire continent behind the line.
Yeah, I think, but I think that goes to show that they probably didn't, even then. I mean, you're there's 1500, so what you're looking about, what was it, about 10 years after the discovery. So probably even then they wouldn't know the full extent of the of South America. Um, so maybe that's why they sort of said, "Oh, yeah, there you go. You can do what you want when it comes to it." Um, but obviously, a big part of it was that uh, both superpowers, so Spain and Portugal, the Papal See did expect that their nations promote, obviously, the Roman Catholic Church amongst the native peoples, which would fall under each jurisdiction. Um, and of course, when we look through especially the Spanish, um, when you had the conquest of the Aztecs or the Incas, um, you had this system of where the church um, hierarchy had quite immense input into the new um, multi-ethnic society because and we'll probably go into a bit later this the because one of the things that I think dispels any accusations of Spain, the Spanish Empire, and general European imperialism as a white supremacist, uh, a white supremacist project, let's say, because that's one of the things I've been hearing about a bit when talking, especially with the current protests in America over the statues, is that the Spanish actively promoted mixing between
Yes, that's true. Yes.
natives, Europeans, and um, black slaves as well, which formed a sort of pyramid of a new servant class um, as well. And I just want to say hello. We got Saffron joining us at the moment.
Oh,
Uh,
Saffron.
and we got Sanders 101 as well, saying oh no, I'm late. Don't worry, you're not too late. We're just sort of talking over sort of like the bare basics at this moment in time. We got Felix as well, who's back. France and Holland also took a bit, and I think the only ones who never gave them up. Yeah, that's France still has. I didn't know this until actually recently. France still has their original colony in uh is it French Guiana in South America?
Oh yes, yes. They is that the one with the volcanic beaches? Is that what I'm thinking of?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah,
Yes, I remember being taught about that in my French class at school.
yeah, same. I think I would. It was some like really 90s video of like this sort of uh, town on the coast, and we were shown this in our French class, and it was, I mean, it was absolutely, real. You could tell it was done in the 90s because it was, the sort of dodgy hairstyles and the multicolored and the sort of trousers that sort of hang around your waist and below your waist and everything, so you could sort of tell what time period it was done. But yeah, I remember that it was it's I mean, I don't think they won't call it a French colony today.
No, they call it
Um,
the departments, or is that something else?
yeah, but let's be honest. I mean, it is a colony.
Yeah, they are called. There's like no, it's not departments. That's the areas of France. What's it called? Because they're more of they're more part of France than say the Falklands are part of England. Say, I can't remember what they're called. But there's like I think it's 4 or 5 official ones.
Yeah. I think they adopt the similar policy what they do with Corsica, because obviously Corsica is um obviously has its own um because it's its own island. It has and it's quite detached. I'm just trying to think, what did the term they use for it. Let me just search
Yes,
French.
I'm trying to find that as well because they definitely have a specific word
I think it was
for
French
them.
department. French department. You're right. I think it was French. It is French department.
I thought the departments were just areas of France, like like what we call counties.
Yeah. What I'm doing is I'm looking on Wikipedia, so it might not be the most accurate, but
Yeah, there's places like Martinique and Guadeloupe.
I mean, I think because this probably we talk about the French now, but with Algeria, because before Algeria gained its independence, it the French would obviously would still refer to Algeria that they can't have their independence because it was like a province within France.
Yes,
Um,
it's what I found very interesting. I think was it the EU elections where I think it was Gibraltar voted as part of Southwest England.
yes,
Um,
that's right. Yeah.
but obviously, when we have our national elections, Gibraltar don't. They're not a constituency in our national elections, are they?
No, they're not. They have their own
Sort of.
they have because they have you have like it's like a governor general and what was it, Sargon at the last
Yes, that was it. He went and
last
tried to debate him.
yeah, I think he sort of he tried to borderline challenge them to a duel on the rock.
It was a very public debate me, bro, kind of event.
Yeah, and I live in the West Country, and I Sargon came to my town. But alas, I didn't get to talk to him because I was, unfortunately, the day he was there, I was working,
Nice.
so I didn't get to talk to him. But no, he came to our town, and a couple of people I knew went down there, and it was quite interesting debate. But yeah, I mean, Gibraltar's part of Southwest, which
Yeah, European for the European elections it was.
yeah, yeah. And
That's what I was going to say, because I believe that the French overseas territories they get to vote in the French elections and things, right?
yeah, they do. They're like
But
they get
they're more integrated
presidential.
than the British ones. The British ones are more their own thing, but still culturally British, like the Falklands say. But I suppose, obviously, Falklands War was them getting invaded, and we had to protect them. So
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is down to like the oh, sorry about that. I think a lot of it is down to the UN um position on colonies, because obviously you got like this massive, you had this massive drive which still goes on to decolonize areas of the world and everything. And I think the reason why the French probably went down that line of basically just making French uh, French Ghana a what's it, like a province, like or a department, like say Normandy or somewhere like that, um, was to, I guess, legitimize its own rule.
yes,
Um,
it would be like making Gibraltar just another constituency or county within England, but just
yeah,
overseas.
yeah, and I mean, it's just worth noting that Britain, while we're going down this route, Britain had we allowed places like the Falklands, like places like Bermuda and overseas territories to have referendums if they wanted to remain
Oh yes, yes.
overseas territories, and of course they all um, voted to remain with the current system, which is something I don't believe the French or any other power currently with overseas territories has offered.
Bloody frogs.
So exactly. um, Saffron has also been saying she was been to. Uh, I've been to Weatherspoons with Sargon. Um,
She's flexing on us.
yeah, so that which Weatherspoons was that? It might be because it might be the one where I live. Even then, I'd be more pissed off.
Imagine living in such an urban place that you have a Weatherspoons.
Yeah, well, the Weatherspoons where I live is built. It's really a shame in many ways because it's sort of situated within an old Tudor building.
Okay, that's quite cool. To be fair,
It is quite cool, but
it's
at the
better than
same
being a
time,
concrete block. Right?
yeah, I mean, I mean, there's some Weatherspoons, like there's one in Bideford where you stand outside and it's a you look at it and it's complete shithole.
Yes.
um,
Well, I think I've been to. There's a few. Where am I thinking? There's one in. Is it Aberystwyth? There's like a giant kind of built into the train station, but it's like an old sort of
yeah.
Victorian train station.
Mm.
Um, I mean, I guess if you're gonna have a chain of pubs, you may as well try and make it look like a proper old British pub rather than some concrete horror.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think the one where I live, they've sort of they haven't done too much to make it look like a out of place with the Tudor work, which is quite nice. And it's actually it's really funny because it's where it's located in the town. It's like tucked away in the old quarter of the town, so it's when you walk round, you don't really see it until you get like right next to it, because there's a lot of old Tudor medieval buildings around it, so you don't see it. It's not like a present thing on the high street. It's quite neatly tucked away,
That's nice.
um, which is quite nice, and it's perfect to have. I guess you say perfect to have meetings and all that sort of stuff there. Um,
Secret
but
intimate meetings with Saffron.
yeah, yeah, mix with saffron. Um, but anyway,
We go back to Columbus, I suppose.
yeah, we'll go back to Columbus. So yeah, because he made several. How many voyages did
I
he
think
make?
4. I want to say.
Yeah, you're right. He made four voyages because the first one landed on the coast of the Bahamas. Actually, I've got a map up here, so we can have a you can have a look.
Yeah,
People
that's good. Yeah.
have a look at it. Um, let's just see if I can do this without messing it up. Um, uh, all right, you can guess you can all see yeah, you can all
Oh
see this.
yes.
Yeah. So yeah, like the he made four voyages. And one thing that I guess is probably not talked about is he didn't actually set foot on mainland on the mainland at all of Central America or South America. He skirted round it, but most of his activity was within Cuba or the Bahamas and or Hispaniola, which is Santo Dominico or the Dominican. It's a Dominican Republic now. I think that's what they call it now.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Yeah, makes
yeah,
sense.
so that was his area. And of course, in his first voyage, he got to um, the coast of Cuba, and then of course the islands, the Bahamas, um, and he saw the indigenous people who lived there. And he, up at this point, he believed that he was somewhere off the coast of Japan in the Far
Yes,
East.
yes. One of
Yeah,
those islands around there.
he believed he was somewhere in Japan, even up at this point. Um, so again, that's why the Native Americans in the Americas are referred to as the Indians, which is something you're not allowed to call them nowadays, is because he thought he had reached the Indies, which they would have known about as the Far East. Um, I guess you could say probably like Indonesia area. I think that's probably where he thought he was closest to. Um, but uh, and yeah, as I said, he made several more voyages, um, and then at the end of it, if I remember correctly, he became a governor of one of the islands. Um,
Yeah, that does sound familiar.
I'm just going to search because this is where he did become governor. Yeah. Um, yeah. So he became governor of the west of the Spanish Indies, I guess it was. So it wasn't like a one island; it was obviously a collection of islands, which Spain either had held claim over or actively had colonies on, and of course he would uh, be ruling over the native population. Um, with the consent of the Spanish um, kingdom. Uh, though it is important to note that again go as an important point to make here. Spain, as we know it today, didn't exist. It was actually quite similar to the United Kingdom as we have today. You had a union of crowns between the Kingdom of Castile and the Kingdom of Aragon.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, because my knowledge of Spanish history is not the best, I would say. I think that's one thing that I did know. That's after they kicked out the Moors, right? That was
yeah. Well, it was. I think it was. It occurred just before, but because you had it was called like the era of the two Catholic monarchs. So you had like the King of Castile marrying the Queen of um um Aragon, which um and then of course that culminated with the Moors being kicked out of Granada in 1492. So yeah, and this and the one the important thing is the Spanish exploration of the Caribbean was immediately followed from the last of the Reconquista, because of course the Spanish continued the Reconquista into North Africa, because
That's right. Yes.
they believed that North Africa and the what's now Morocco, it was all theirs, and so they continued, though obviously I want to say a treaty was signed with probably I would imagine like the Sultan, the Moorish Sultan at the time, because obviously they ceased, and then there was the invasion of the Canary Islands, which were it's sort of been said as the first Spanish colony, and that was an interesting one because it's I did a bit of research today to find that out a bit more about that, and it looks like that the sort of myth. Do you know much about like the history of the people, history of the peoples on the Canary Islands at all?
All I know about them currently is they've got some fat telescopes on the mountains.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
That's about as far as my knowledge goes.
The sort of myth about them, and if anyone in chat wants to chime in with this, because if they know anything about it, was that you had the remnants of the Carthage civilization who were living on the Canary Islands, and basically they were left untapped from I guess you could say the fall of the Carthage period, sort of the Roman period, up until that time period, with no contact with the outside world.
Well, for 2,000 years ish.
Yeah.
Nearly. Bloody hell.
Yeah, about roughly about two. It would have been about 2,000 years. Yeah. That's the myth. I say myth because it something that upon research, a lot of it came from Spanish contemporaries of that time period, and I couldn't ascertain how many of those Spanish contemporaries actually went to the Canary Islands to, I guess you could say, to inquire themselves. So, and doing upon research, the only things I can really find about the Canary Islands in itself is I guess you could say, after the Spanish colonized it, and that sort of period up until present day. So I can't really tell if the truth in that. I mean, there is some suggestion that actually the Moors did have settlers on there, so maybe there was some level of contact, though. Again, one of the things that supports the myth is that the sort of Caucasian, let's say, like the Caucasian people living there, were so isolated that they weren't Christian and hadn't even known of what Christianity or was. They
Well, we
still
can't have that.
followed pagan. So obviously, when the Spanish turned up, were they in for a surprise of what's going to follow?
Well, exactly. If you're not a Christian, probably the worst group of people to come across is the Spanish Empire.
It's so sad because you've got the Ascension Island not too far, relatively speaking, not too far, which was the English controlled. So if only the English had discovered them. Bad luck, though.
Poor descendants of Hannibal. 2,000 years, and then you get wrecked by the Spanish Empire.
I mean, there must have been some massive amount of inbreeding for society. I mean, for 2,000 years, because surely the population must have been a few thousand.
Yeah, I wonder what. That's a point, just from a sort of biological point of view. What's the sort of critical number of your population to be self-sustaining but not inbreeding? I guess it must be a function of the time that you're left alone. Because obviously, you got tribes in the Amazon or whatever that never get above a few hundred people.
No, and that was one of the problems that you had with the North American tribes, because I mean, and this goes back to what we were saying, was that if you look at the political makeup, or the sort of the geographic political makeup before the European arrival, you had your proper empires, your Aztec empires, which were proper
Yeah,
nations.
yeah. They
They
were.
weren't they
Wasn't there
weren't
something like? I was going to say. I swear it was something. I saw this a while ago that the Aztec Empire at one time rivaled Europe in population, in
yeah
terms of raw number of
the
people.
um yeah, I mean, before the Spanish arrived, I was looking at one it was rough estimate that it was thought that possibly anywhere from 15 to 20 million um, lived within the Aztec empire. Um, Bearing in mind, though, if you look at, and I'll just try and bring up the Aztec empire now, their sort of geographic um,
Well, Mexico City's
control.
built on top of Tenochtitlan, isn't it? It's the same place, which is why they have the cactus and eagle and snake as their flag.
That's right. Yeah, it's again the sort of myth of the because it's the myth of the Aztecs was they originally came from what's now North America.
Yeah, they came from
Um,
the Great Plains, didn't they?
yeah, and eagle. It was like a eagle. As you said, they were told from one of their gods through this eagle to travel south, and where the eagle would land, that's where you would found your city and everything else. And of course, it land the myth that it landed in Tenochtitlan or Tenochtitlan or
Tenochtitlan.
is that how you pronounce it?
I think so. Yeah, Tenochtitlan. That's what I remember from like year 8's history, where we had to learn all these Aztec names, and obviously everyone thought it was hilarious to try and learn them. So I have actually remembered some.
Yeah, and so Tenochtitlan, yeah, let's call it that. Um, and of course, I'm just going to bring this up on screen um, as well. Uh,
Because they had because Tenochtitlan was, I think it was situated between a few lakes as well, so it was quite easy to build around. Yeah, there you go.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
it was aliens, man. No way they could have done that without the wheel.
Well, you say that, but some of their carvings, like gold, sort of things. I mean, it looks like that he's in a spaceship. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not going to lie. It looks like a spaceship. Um, um, yeah. So, and it's probably also important to mention, like the Aztecs. They were very similar to and I remember there was a historian who sort of compared the Aztec and the Incas very similar to the Chinese uh, dynasty and how they ruled, because they very much ruled from like their city urban centers, and what you see like on the map on the right side of the screen, you've got these sort of smaller nations which were also they weren't tribal, but they were, I guess you could say, you had reached the point of what you would describe as a civilization. So you got your Tlaxcalans, and you got your Metzalins, and you got your Teolitians, and Totopecs and such, and um, they were very much the ones who would, I guess you would, especially the tax lacquers in the center of the screen there, next to their capital. They were very much the ones who supported Cortez when he
Yes,
landed
that's right.
at
Yes.
Veracruz, because I think he got 20,000 native troops from these various, especially the ones I just mentioned, the Tlaxcalas. He got 20,000 volunteered to with him to march on the Aztec capital because
I mean, 20,000 men isn't a small army by even sort of medieval standards.
no,
Like,
that
obviously, in the ancient world we had truly enormous armies, but medieval armies weren't, to that level. 20,000 guys is quite large from a Native American well, I guess we said it's not a tribe; it was a proper empire, but from a small nation.
Yeah, I mean, and this goes back to your way. And this is quite an interesting debate I had a few years ago. Was you hear the brutality of empires, but no one talks about the brutality of the Aztec Empire, and there was a reason why these sort of neighboring nations and also tribes, why they feared and hated the Aztecs so much. And one of the reasons was, and I'll just see if I can bring up an image at all of why the Aztecs were, and there's obviously there's going to be the human sacrifice, but it was the quantity,
Oh
the
yeah,
number
yeah,
of people that were um, sacrificed. Because I mean, I
It was,
think
you know,
there's
tens of thousands, wasn't it? On certain holidays, it was tens of thousands of captured enemies.
yeah, yeah, there was like supposedly like tens of thousands a day, which again for the time period must have been a ridiculous amount.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to people about this before and blaming the well, yes, in the invading Spanish for what they did. But like, can you imagine being some random Catholic who, has grown up in Spain or Italy or whatever? You've decided to go on a voyage across the world to see what's out there. You got on your ship. You suffered to get across the Atlantic because it was hard to do.
Yes.
Obviously, you're a devout Catholic praying to God, believing in heaven and hell, etc. You get there and you find a city full of people who don't look like you. You find there's volcanoes, there's horrible jungle, there's unfamiliar seas and stars. You think you've reached hell because they've got giant castles and fortresses and pyramids and this, killing tens of thousands of people, ripping their heart out on top. It's like,
What?
can you imagine a God-fearing Catholic at that point being like, let's say, saying like, yeah, let's leave these guys alone?
Well, I mean that sort of goes into the actually quite an important point you raised there, because Cortez origin now, and again, this is something which is again never told, especially by the anti European um, sort of people that you would hear when they talk about historical events, the ones that rage against Spanish Empire and for all evil, pure evil. Um, Originally, Cortez marched his men. He did sack a few Aztec cities. I'll give you that. He did sack a few,
Just
but
one or two cities, nothing big.
yeah, I mean, it was well. They refused to open the gates. I mean, what the fuck do you expect? You got an army of like bloody 30,000, and you tell them no, we're not opening the city to you. I mean, what the hell are you going to expect them to do?
Well, presumably, if they've got an army if they've got 20,000, is this before they got the 20,000 guys or after?
After, because it was like because of course you had like you had the Spanish contingent, and you had the native contingent. I believe you had a native contingent at the time, and I say Cortez marched into the Aztec city, the capital city, and originally his aim. I mean, from historians, they say that the reason he marched in there was basically the Spanish, the Aztecs, sorry, gave the Spanish at Veracruz gold, basically his gold as a gift, welcome, and then it was like, oh, we like the gold, thank you very much. Is there more? And from what it became apparent that yes, there was plenty of gold, but obviously the Aztecs didn't use gold in any sort of valuing way
Yes, it was
for
just
currency.
decoration, wasn't it?
Yeah, they didn't use it at all. Not like especially. I think the same with silver. I don't think silver was used as a point of value like you would have had it with gold in European and Asia and places like that. So obviously Cortez decided, well, he wanted to go and meet as an ambassador. He wanted to go and meet the Aztec emperor Montezuma.
Yes, Montezuma, that's right.
Yeah, and he marched his contingent to the capital city of the Aztecs, and he met with the Aztecs, because when he marched in there, he wasn't hostile in any sort of way. He basically just marched in there with his men. He greeted. He had his I think it was his wife, who was a native from Cuba, who knew the language of the Aztecs, was the translator. And from what is understood, and this is where I did a bit of research, and this is where historians don't agree on what event happened next. It was said that the following day, he met Montezuma and like the high priest and all that sort of stuff on top of the one, the pit one, as you say, like the religious pit, one of the main pyramids in the city, and it was apparent there and then that this was obviously used for human sacrifice because bloodstains. But at the top of the pyramid there was a sheltered, I guess you could say like a sheltered entrance to a sort of shrine, and in that shrine Montezuma, it was said that Montezuma and the Aztecs were showing Cortez and his senior men their god, but their god was basically this red figure with horns.
Oh, interesting.
Now, so as you can imagine, being devout Catholics with the human sacrifice and this deity, one of the Aztec deities,
I think it became. Remember how to pronounce the Aztec god? It was because they had one which was like a giant bird. I think
yes.
that they named pterodactyls after. It's like Quetzalcoatl, I think, was that one.
I will find the Aztec god.
Aztec pantheon.
Yes, I'm just going to see. It might be the Aztec god of fire. Let me find. Let me just.
Yes,
see.
I mean, as I said, if you can show well, I guess it's like showing modern people picture carvings of aliens.
Yeah.
Telox water. That's one I've heard of. So the gods of fire, there is. Oh my god. Zutecuhtli. I want to say.
Yeah.
Chantico, that's an easy one. That's a goddess. Zlotl, god of death. Double of Quetzalcoatl. That's the one I have heard of. That's one of the more powerful ones, I think.
Yeah. So So it was a god of war, and I'm just trying to find, because I'm trying to find a depiction. I guess they would have seen back then of what the Spanish would have seen, and probably would have warranted their response when they their response, which was to basically order 66 the entire city.
Yes, well, we've crossed, out of the known world. We've come to a place with different stars in the sky. We've found a group of people who look entirely different from us.
Yeah,
could be demons. Who knows? And they've discovered that they're killing people in the thousands on top of a temple, and they're worshipping a red-horned guy.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't look good for them, does it? Like down.
No.
So annoying, because I'm trying to find. I'll bring up on screen the closest thing that I guess you could say to probably the sort of, I guess you could say, modern interpretation of it, which probably wouldn't bring you to the conclusion that this looked like a. Actually, hold on a sec. I think I found him. If I found him. Right. So this okay. So this is an interpretation from the Europeans' perspective, about 100 years afterwards of what
Oh, so this
they.
is what the Europeans thought then.
This is what they thought. So if I just bring if I bring this up, let's see.
Oh, interesting. Just as a slight side note, the apparently we said that the original people who traveled down to where Mexico City is now and then founded the Aztec Empire, apparently they were called the Mexica,
Yes.
which kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, because I heard that as well. Because I mean, there's a lot of myths surrounding because why Mexico was called Mexico, and the because I heard that there was some also that some of the Spanish struggled to pronounce um the Aztec names, especially the capital city. So
We're
they just
struggling now, yeah.
and we're struggling now, and so they just called it. Probably they called it after the other regional term, the Mexican or Mexico, and so maybe that's how the name sort of stuck to the region. And yeah, as I said, so this on screen, this is a depiction of what the Europeans brought back to I guess you say the rest of Europe to what they thought the um, god of war or the Aztec god of war looked like. Now, unfortunately, you can't find any. I couldn't find, and it probably makes sense because the response from the Spanish at the time was they saw it, they were pretty horrified, probably quite scared, especially the soldiers, that um, Montezuma ended up dying. Cortez pretty much seized the city, and you had a battle which the Aztec, I guess you could say warriors, and I think one of Montezuma's relatives decided to lead like a counterattack, and it resulted in a good portion of the uh, city. I think what was it? It was a good portion of the city was destroyed in the fighting.
Yes.
And that happened within a very short amount of time, which would have been quite dramatic development to say the least. But I know that I'm just going to, because I know there'll be some people who might say in the chat in the set well, we don't know how he died or who killed him, Montezuma, because there is some suggestion that Montezuma might have actually tried to have calmed tensions. That his death didn't cause the fighting; something else caused the fighting. Like because it was also thought that the Spanish may have tried to seize the temple where the sacrifices were going on and tried to convert it into a Roman Catholic chapel, church, or whatever. To purify the place, because obviously, again, from the Spanish perspective, it was devil worshipping.
Well, yeah, it would take some purifying. You might need a lot of holy water to get rid of the sacrifice of probably 100,000 souls.
I mean, I mean, yeah, I mean, because I mean, I'm surprised that Cortez and the Spanish, they must have known or they must have heard what went on there. Which then begs a difference. Were they shocked? And this goes back to the sort of what was their intentions? I mean, did Cortez really go there to have a diplomatic relationship, or was it? Did he actually go there to effectively cause trouble and a bit of mischief?
Yeah. I mean,
And also, it's important. He didn't actually at this point when he landed. He didn't actually throughout this entire campaign. He had an arrest warrant, I believe, from the King of Spain. He basically illegally acquired ships in Cuba, and um, when he arrived off the coast, he set fire to the ship so none of the men could return effectively. And the I think it was the governor of Cuba had to
Yeah.
had go to go after him, but then his men the Cuban governor's men then sort of joined Cortez, and so again for Cortez personally, he had to win against the Aztecs, because if he failed, he would then uh, and he would, I mean, stay and die or return to Spain and be executed by the king, or if you again, and so he succeeded by his success against the Aztecs, which allowed the creation of New Spain, and everything pretty much guaranteed his safety for that.
Yeah, Cortez was a bit of a mad lad, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. And I've just say to people in comments, I've nearly doxed myself, inadvertently. This is what happens. Don't have automatically filled out passwords or things. Just don't. It's not worth it. Right. So
I was just thinking, like, so you said Cortez's wife spoke the Aztec language. So presumably that language wasn't well spoken outside of the empire, or if it was, that means the empire has some sort of, I guess, notoriety or knowledge outside of its borders, presumably across into the Caribbean as well.
we know that the natives on Cuba knew about the Aztecs. We know that those, I guess you could say, as far down as Panama, knew about the Aztecs. So
yeah, just imagine being Cortez. So your wife speaks this language. You've had you sat on Cuba. You've got a load of armed men, and they say, and obviously, if the Aztecs are feared and well known for sacrificing thousands of people, presumably, as the mad lad he was, he would have thought, we're going to set out and go and say hi, go and see if we've got any gold, go and see if the rumors are true. So it's not like he just landed and then found them. It's like he went out seeking them.
Yeah. And also there was a I mean, there was also the risk. I mean, because you have to remember, is Cortez had to. I mean, his wife, and I'll try and find her name, because he had to rely on her for quite amount. Like there was quite a lot was put on her, because I don't know if you've heard the. I mean, you probably. There's sort of been themes like in there was that Alien program where it was like that redhead woman, what was it? And she's like a professor, linguistic professor. Was it Arrival? That's it. And there's like these squid aliens, and she's sent up into the spacecraft, and it's basically, the film is basically the learning how to communicate, use the sort of the aliens' language and everything, and then the aliens learn her language, and then they can sort of do any sort of basic form of communication. And she sort of makes reference that the importance of it, saying that if you take, say, like when the British met the Aboriginal Australian Aboriginals, there you have to be careful when you're translating, because you could accidentally translate something or do something which is heavily misinterpreted, which could cause a violent reaction or misinformation. So, I mean, one of the examples I can think of which might have caused that, which wasn't anyway sort of violent, but like the word kangaroo
Yes.
is basically translation of "look at him go." And it was a bunch of the Aboriginals and the British, and they saw kangaroos, and the British soldier pointed at saying, "Oh, look at that! What's that?" And the Aborigine just said kangaroo, which is "look at him go." And that sort of miscommunication must have been something which I imagine the Spanish would have thought of, because anything that she translated which would have been incorrect or inaccurate could have caused it could have caused a violent outburst, because of course Montezuma and Cortez, while they would have stood and looked at each other, they wouldn't be able to understand a single word each other was saying, or really be able to comprehend, especially from the Aztec point of view, they probably wouldn't be able to even comprehend the sort of technologies that that the Spanish brought with them, say like horses, dogs, and cannons and such. So I imagine that, and so when it comes down to the his wife, I don't know if she was the wife at the time of this expedition. The promise of gold is definitely something. I always thought that could have been, it could have gone terribly wrong if they wouldn't known to understand what the Spanish were looking for, if that makes any sense.
Yes, I mean, do we know what the Aztecs used for currency then, if it wasn't gold?
I think. Let me just have a
Or
look.
did they not use? Do they have a barter economy?
I know. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not. They weren't full blown anarchists. Um, let me just look at. There was a currency they used. They did use a form of currency. Um, let's see. What was the?
No gold standard.
It's copper. Yeah.
Oh,
Copper.
interesting. Interesting. That's not too
The-
far off then. I guess so. Was gold more readily available than copper then?
yeah. Gold, silver. Was, especially in the Inca Empire, silver was very common.
Trash.
Um, sorry.
Trash. It's nothing for them.
Trash. Yeah. Well, yeah. For them, it would have been just pointless. Pointless ores. I mean, and that, and I think I was just reading back, because I've got two books here. One by, and I will recommend this on the stream. One's called Conquistadors by Michael Wood, and the other one is called War and Gold by Kwasi Kwarteng, who is an MP, in a Conservative MP, who's actually put together quite a in-depth analysis of why the Spanish went over there, why what sort of enticed them to look for gold and everything, and also the debts that it caused, because for conquistadors to go over, like Cortez, he was an impoverished noble. He lost his land holdings in Spain, and he racked up a ridiculous amount of debt, and especially in Cuba. Hence why he stole boats and went across like the mad lad he was.
Yeah,
And then
he does have absolutely mad lad status at this point.
I mean, imagine stealing imagine you're like a politician, and you steal like I guess like imagine you're like a councillor in this country, and you steal your local MP's yacht. That and then you like you find some lost mythical land, and then that's basically what he would have he would have done. um um yeah, and but in one of the I believe it was in Kwasi Kwarteng, the Spanish conquistadors would notice that because gold was so, I guess, it's trash. It was, I think the term was used. It was like the waste of the gods or something like that. Um, Peasant farmers, like, I guess you could say Aztec peasants, would wear gold because it was, again, it was so common. But then from the Spanish perspective, they thought, "Oh my God, the peasants are laden with gold. I mean, we've hit the jackpot, fellas."
Yes, lads.
Yeah, we've hit the jackpot. And and obviously the I I guess, I mean, maybe Cortez realized that they didn't use it as a currency, so um, but for your average conquistador, your average mercenary who was present, they wouldn't have known uh, the, too much of the natives upon the outset. But yeah, I mean, his wife. I'm just going to look up Cortez's wife because I mean, she's quite an interesting figure in on itself. And again, it's something that you don't hear from the Howling Left when they all go after Cortez, because his his wife was, she was a native.
Feminist icon.
Yeah, he had two wives. Obviously, not he didn't have two wives at the same time, but he had two wives because one died and he remarried.
Not that much of a mad lad then.
No, I mean, get some two wives. I do like what Saladin. He had like 5 wives or something ridiculous like that. Native wife. Okay, yeah. So oh, this is interesting. Now, apparently, she was a mistress, but never what. But I actually thought he married her. Maybe not. I don't know.
Okay.
I would.
She was a side thing who translated translated Aztec for him. So what you're saying is he was basically just banging his translator.
Yeah. Well, she married another. She married a Spanish man. Oh, was this like? Was he banging his best friend's wife? Wait,
Okay, he's back to mad lad status.
I need to find out. Who is this? His name is Juan D. Maloney. Let's find out who this guy is.
Put poor Juan getting cucked by is it Herman Cortez? Herman Cortez?
Yeah. Oh shit. Yeah, he was on the expedition with Cortez. Okay, hang on a sec. Okay, this is a bit
fucking Spaniards. Swear to God.
How did this guy? Okay, this is a bit. Oh, okay, this is even. She bore Cortez's son Martin, and then later married one of his soldiers, which is that Juan D. Jaramillo, who, with whom she journeyed to Spain, where she was warmly received by the Spanish court.
Racist.
So basically, he had his way with. Cortez had his way with her, banged her, got her knocked up, and then one of the soldiers had to marry her and take care of her, basically, and Cortez's son.
Oh, so can somebody get a Virgin Herman Cortez versus Virgin Juan whatever versus Chad Herman Cortez?
Yeah, I expect to see a meme somewhere later on of that.
Yeah, Felix is saying that the real jackpot were the waifus. I mean, that's kind of sums up the Spanish Empire.
Yes, it. Well, yes, and we'll go into the probably now is a good time. Anybody who you meet on the internet when talking about the Spanish Empire, first of all, and I'll just bring upon the banner, one of the banners that I've created. So I put on quotation mark genocide. How does a army of, let's say, 150 men, of white Spanish, though I am skeptical if the Spanish are white, but anyway,
We'll call it European, we'll say.
European, yeah. How did an army of 150 of them wipe out what was it, about 14 million natives without without miniguns, without napalm, without anything? Okay, how did they do? Well, obviously they didn't do it, and the reason we know this is because it was actually germs, European diseases that things like smallpox.
Yeah, so they got smallpox, we got syphilis.
Exactly. And of course, but the narrative in this country, in the West and in today's society, is so riddled with complete BS, that it's sort of inclined that there is a that it was all organized genocide. And I'm gonna bring up, because you'll see this on Wikipedia. Now, Wikipedia is quite a good example because a lot of people, while it's not the best thing to go for when it comes to historical sources, because you can change it and you can put all sorts of bollocks in there, it is quite a good one to go to just to see, because this is where I guess you would say your average person on the street, if they heard something, oh well, I'll just go search it on Wikipedia. And so I'll just bring up, now it's called Genocide of Indigenous People, right? Now, what would you, Jos, say? What is your definition of genocide?
I guess removal of a genus, so I guess group of people.
And it would have to be a deliberate act by a group of people or state or something
by
like that.
An external force.
Yeah. So of course you got here genocide of indigenous people, and you got all the issues like ethnic cleansing and all that sort of, and rape and genocidal rape and racism, all that lovely stuff. And you've got the example of the sort of Native American genocide, right? But if you go to the Spanish section here, it sort of immediately concedes that actually it was 8 million indigenous people died primarily through the spread of Afro-Eurasian diseases.
Of course, yeah.
Well, there we go. It's not genocide, is it then? Because as well as any reasonable person would conclude, and this is what I think David Starkey was trying to interpret when he says, like, slavery is genocide. Slavery is not genocide, because otherwise why have we got so many damned blacks? He wasn't saying it as a I guess a point to just he wasn't saying it like damned blacks as in damn black people. He was saying it out of frustration, and because,
well, yes, I mean you could turn what he was saying around and put it on Germany. If you say and the Holocaust was so bad that there aren't any damn Jews around.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
and I mean, I think that when he said the damned blacks bit was just a point of frustration with the framing of the question, because it's such a clumsy, ill thought out question. And similarly, I would say that the idea of genocide of indigenous people, and you have quite a expansive list, but then you go to like just the Native American section, and it just immediately concedes that actually it was Afro-Eurasian diseases. Okay, well, what did the okay? So we know that the Spanish, the people of the world back then didn't know about germs. They didn't even know germs existed.
Yeah,
So you
I
can't.
heard. I think it was Stefan Molyneux making this point that people were saying, "Oh, that they had smallpox blankets," and it was like they didn't have a germ theory of disease.
No, they weren't some mad lads eugenicists going around back then. They didn't they they didn't know because and how do we know? Because they were dying in Europe of fucking smallpox and the Black Plague. They didn't know what the fuck this was. And anybody who suggests that there was sort of this grand conspiracy to wipe them all out using smallpox and everything needs their fucking head examining. Um, as really, I mean, what? There's such a ridiculous and because and just to point out, okay, let's just say they did use smallpox to wipe out the natives. Why is it then the wealthiest Spanish who moved over to the New World used natives as servants and such amongst the wealthiest Spanish? Because that means they would be risking infecting themselves, the ones that were say let's just say agreeing with the left's narrative on this, committing the genocide. So there is no sort of rational reasoning behind any of this, and you know with this with this sort of framing of the Wikipedia article, it really should say indigenous people who died of Eurasian diseases. That I mean that you could I would be a more accurate title, but to argue genocide is a very deliberate and we live in I mean, and this is probably since the decolonization period of the last century, and we were talking with P-Man and Yeetus about this with the British Empire stream. There has just been this constant attack on European imperialism that it's got to the stage where basically there is just lying about history at this stage, of what actually happened. And as you said, like the smallpox blanket, yeah, those blankets were given because smallpox, it gives you the shivers. Your body temperature goes completely haywire. And the idea with the blankets, because you had monks, I mean, you had Catholic monks out there and people who were trying to help the natives. And I think to say that actually no, they're just genociding them is a complete and horrendous lie. It really is such a terrible lie.
Yeah, it's retarded. I mean, I would say, I mean, I've quite often when I've said to people defending the British Empire, I've said, well, at least we weren't the Spanish. I think at the moment we are trying to defend the Spanish now, so I need to find another person to blame.
Yeah, okay. To even it out, let's just the Spanish they didn't like when it came to Incas. Just to even it out. When it came to the Incas, the Spanish conquistador in that who wasn't Cortez, it was another one called Pizarro, I believe it was. He did enslave the native the Inca people, and he made them like force work in like it was a couple of mines, silver mines, which were in mountains, which were considered to be the again like a holy place where one of their gods resides. And because of the sulfur and such, there was a lot of death, and so I mean, I guess you could pin that against them if you wanted to go. I just got another one from Felix here. I've just brought up on screen. Look up epidemicide. This is what you're talking about. I will look it up. Epidemicide.
Is that from the same root as like epistemological? I'm assuming.
I will. Oh yeah, I spelled it wrong. Right. Well, I got something up here called from it's a PDF from research. There's like a student work uploaded. Let's just see. Hang on a sec. Let's riddle with ads. Okay. Decolonization of knowledge, epistemicide, participatory research and higher education. Right, so I'll just bring this up on screen because this is. Thank you, Felix, for sending this in. We will have a look at it. I hope it's not too edgy.
Careful.
If I see the J word and eugenics, I'm clicking off. I'll be warning you all. I already did my defend in the previous stream. We ended up talking about the we ended up talking in the last stream about what was it? I argued that the Nazis. I mean, you compare the Nazis to the Soviet Union, but the Nazis were effective as rulers. They didn't like fuck up the economy to an extent that
that's debatable.
Yeah, I mean they didn't cause like famine in like Bavaria or anything like that.
Yeah, okay, true. Yeah, I mean you could have given it another decade. We'll see, but yes.
Yeah, I mean they did like secure corruption like through oil deals and such. So I mean they were corrupt, but yeah, yes, this is what I got up on screen at the moment, and it's decolonization of knowledge, epidemicide, participatory research, higher education. Right. So this is from the University of Victoria, Canada, and the Society of Participatory Research in Asia. Right. So the article raised question about the word knowledge refers to drawn from 40 years classical word knowledge to Gaussian authors. Right. So the key messages is epidemicide refers to killing of knowledge systems. The concept of knowledge democracy acknowledges the importance of multiple knowledge systems, such as organic, spiritual, and land-based systems, frameworks arising from social movements and the knowledge of the marginalized or excluded. It's about open access for the sharing of knowledge, making it a powerful tool for taking action in social movements to deepen democracy and to struggle for fairer and healthier world. Higher education institutions today exclude many of the diverse knowledge systems in the world, including those of indigenous peoples and excluded racial groups and those excluded on the basis of gender, class, or sexuality. Well, my response to that would be I don't think the world needs the Aztec culture back, quite frankly. I think you can have your holidays, but at the same time, if I went to Mexico City, I wouldn't want to have my heart ripped out. And so Felix says the premise being that the colonists destroyed and usurped the existing native ways of knowing. Fundamentally, the postmodernists annexation of pre-colonial methods as better than the Western ones.
Well, yes, anyone who's still all of human history is an argument against the idea of the noble savage.
Well, I mean, I just want to point out. Okay, can anyone tell me on stream or in the comments, like if Felix or Saffron or anyone else, or you, Joz, can you tell me about the population that lived in Mexico before the Aztecs turned up? Wait, no. Why can't you? Because the Aztecs wiped out their cultural knowledge and systems of government and systems of culture, and same with the previous and the previous. There are entire Celtic tribes before the Romans turned up in Britain, which names and culture and gods are completely gone, and we don't know because it was wiped out. But again, the Celts wiped out the ancient Britons, who were before they arrived. So I mean, I don't get what the point is. I mean, your situation isn't unique, and if you're going to resurrect, let's say a culture, the problem is, the problem is, you're going to be resurrecting a detailed bit of the culture from the perspective of the colonizer. So you can be some larping fucking native nationalist or black nationalist, but at the same time you're getting your cultural talking points from the perspective of the colonist. So for me, and I have the same perspective when it comes to like neo-pagans and such, especially like the Celtic neo-pagans. I mean, the Norse ones are a bit different because their sort of cultural their sort of historical and cultural teachings are quite well documented, and they've remained so. But it just seems like they achieve little because they rail against the colonizer, but yet they still use the colonizer's framing of, say, like the Aztec world as their and the indigenous world as their basis for their worldview. So what are you decolonizing of your knowledge? I mean, if you're going to decolonize, that means you're going to have to go back to square one.
Go back to Africa.
Go back to square one. This goes back to like the destruction of the statues of Christopher Columbus, and I had a look on the news earlier. I was looking up I wanted to see if any like conquistador statues have been damaged at all, and there've been a few protests in Mexico City against a couple of like conquistador, like Cortez and such, and I think there was one like in Albuquerque. There was like there's like a statue of a conquistador up there, like some Spanish dude who went up frontiering and all that. But I mean, like Christopher Columbus, he is like the devil incarnate. Let's say for the sort of revisionist mob, the anti-history mob, because he is the European who, quote unquote, discovered America.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, the statues too. This kind of goes back to the statues of Churchill, I suppose. But as I said, the discovery of America by Columbus, whoever it was, it is an extremely important event. And as I said, I reckon it's probably the most important event since the Ice Age. Now, that deserves some commemoration, right? And whether or not it was going to be Columbus, it would have been someone else eventually. Like, the time was right for that discovery to be made. So the fact that just because the monument looks like him, doesn't mean that it is a celebration of him and his entire life, everything about him.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the problems I've noticed when it comes to the argument is like, well, I mean, and this is especially I don't know how many people who are in outside Britain who watch these streams, but especially like on British Twitter, you have like your response where you use that argument, but then you have them about saying, "Oh, well, you wouldn't put up a statue of Jimmy Savile like a rapist, and you wouldn't put up a paedophile, and you wouldn't put up a statue of Hitler for their accomplishments and everything." And it's like, well, and they argue from such such a loaded position, where for them, they contribute Columbus as he was a genocider. There was one chap who was convinced that Columbus personally killed 14 million natives. I mean, fucking hell! How the hell did you?
I think he's got enough cannonballs for that.
Well, I know, and the trouble is they believe it. They believe it, and and this goes back to what and this is something I noticed with the Black Lives Matter stuff, is that you've got a lot of professed historians on Twitter, on social media, and appearing on mainstream news networks who are basically like, because I mean I live not too far from Bristol, so I've had to deal with all the Colston stuff, and I've been talking on these streams like with a few other chaps who live near Bristol, like Plantagenet and such, who who said, quite rightly, nobody knew who Colston chap was before the statue came down. I mean, I heard the name Colston because it's quite. If you go to Bristol, if you went to Bristol before today, before you would have come across a theatre, a couple of street names, and such, and so it was quite a common name. But again, his great crime was, and you hear this media is they say slave trader, but that was complete rubbish. He never ever sold or bought any slaves.
Yes, he was on the board of directors for a company that traded in them and 100 other goods.
And he had a modest amount. I mean, given his he was the Jeff Bezos of the age in England at that time. He didn't. I mean, he never had any. As you said, he had a modest amount of shares in a company which was a slave trading company, but at the same time, your average merchant, your average middle class chap on the street would also probably have, shares in the company. So again, as I say, I mean, his wealth it was purely based on tobacco and spices, especially spices from the Far East. That was it. Nothing else. And when he died, he didn't leave any of the money to his children. He donated it to the city to build properties, halls, and also to renovate St Mary's Cathedral in Bristol, which had a stained glass in there right at the top of the cathedral, which was dedicated with his initials on it. And obviously that's been taken down. A lot of it's been taken down. And I've asked many people, okay, can you name me one ship that Colston ordered, part of his company, let's say Colston Limited, as it would have been then. Can you name me one ship that went to Africa and kidnapped slaves from the West Coast? Name me one.
Well,
And
exactly.
they can't. And this goes back to what we're saying about the British Empire stream. Is one of the things that they cannot comprehend. And I think the BBC BBC started talking about it. One of their articles I noticed today is that the the idea that European ships would go to Africa and kidnap entire villages and
Exactly.
90,000 people.
I'm laughing at people saying that they seem to think that there's just Portuguese guys with nets running around West Africa or East Africa.
I've been fortunate to hold a matchlock and swords from that period, and I can tell you, if you've got a matchlock and then you've got like 10 native with clubs, I'm sorry, but the 10 native clubs are going to fucking destroy you, batter you to death, and there's nothing you're going to be able to do about it. So. And we'll talk about this with British Knights and such on the previous stream. It was slave markets. It was West African empires and like the Soko Empire and the Chadian Society, the Chad Society, and basically the sort of various Islamic empires that existed along the west coast there. And they would enslave their neighbors, the weaker tribes, and they would sell them to the Europeans for weapons, gold, you name it.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's I've always wanted to go on national TV and just say, you know what? Who caused slavery? The transatlantic slavery? Blacks caused it.
Well, I've seen recently a sort of Twitter fight between the Native Americans, African Americans, and Africans. And
yes,
some of the tweets from the Africans were like stop complaining. Our ancestors sold your ass to the white man for some guns.
yeah. I have to say Nigerians are very based, and the Nigerians are. To be honest, I would quite happily import a good size of amount of Nigerians to Bristol to deal with to Bristol. And I mean, I don't know if you saw there was like some Nigerian woman in America at DC who was basically shouting at these Black Lives Matter protesters who were all unironically all white.
Oh yes, I
and
did see that.
and she was basically saying, "What are you complaining about? What are you complaining about?" And it was like there's some like absolute Karen, like middle class American Karen, who just said, "Don't you know that you're being oppressed?" And it was like, it's like, and she turned around and said, "What am I being oppressed about? You're the one that's shouting at me." And and this is the thing. I mean, you've got this really crazy situation in America where you've got these very privileged white Americans who are basically shouting at like black police officers and black Nigerians and such, and basically calling them Uncle Toms. I mean, there was a line of police officers, I think somewhere in Florida, of like they were all black police officers, which I thought was quite interesting, and I think it was deliberately done by the local police chief. Because you had the line of black police officers and you had a bunch of white Black Lives Matter protesters and just calling them like coons and Uncle Toms. And it's like, well,
That's definitely not racist at all.
I mean, what do you think would happen if, say, like a bunch of black police officers in that scenario got a white Black Lives Matter protester on the ground and kneeled on their neck? Do you think? Because I think that would cancel it out. To be honest, I think you could get away with it.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see. That would be funny, yeah. I mean, obviously not. I mean, we'll have to check that the white protest isn't dosed up on fentanyl beforehand.
Yeah, yeah, and I got actually another person who's just commented on the stream a few moments ago. We got Doug Nimitz. So very similar to iconoclasm of Britain. Yeah, I think the statue things in this country, like with Churchill and Colston, it is all iconoclasm because the left, it basically they believe that there is no further way that society can progress. I mean, their world vision is like the final point in the human experience, and anything before that is literally pure evil. In many ways, I mean, just draws back to the Spanish, Jaws. The Spanish destruction of the Aztec temples is very much similar to the Wokarati's destruction of the statues, in the sense they do it out of morality from their perception of what morality is, and I think also they do it out of fear as well, because I think because the trouble is that there is a contingent of like your radical race grifters who are actually, in some ways, they actually believe there's like these hordes of white supremacists lurking in every corner, waiting to strike whenever there's a poor defenseless Jesse Smollett figure with a conveniently placed noose. And as Felix has just pointed out, year zero. Yeah, and that's ultimately what the Maoist the Maoist goal was in China. It was to bring society would start at a new time period. So
I mean,
that
that's
is
the French Revolution as well.
Yeah, and the French, the destruction, the French Revolution, destruction of churches.
I'm talking more about the year zero sort of idea. The idea that this is our new country. We're going to recreate everything. Yeah, they tried to decimalize the time system as well.
Yeah, and oh yeah, because obviously that, and one of the things, with the French Revolution, as you said, with the year zero, is it ultimately led to the Reign of Terror, because it turns out that for year zero to work, everyone has to be on board, but nobody was on board apart
Well,
from a small.
not only do they have to be on board, they have to be perfect.
Yeah,
That's the
and
trouble with utopian thought, is that you got this idea of the perfect society, and if you're not 100% on board with it, then you're not part of it.
yes. Um, I'll just do another. Doug Nimitz. I would advise against bringing base foreigners to deal with other more troublesome foreigners already here. My example would be the Saxons. Yeah, but you have to understand the sort of Celtic, Roman Celtic population that were left to defend themselves were absolute pussies. And so, quite frankly, they deserve to be conquered by the Saxons.
I would say that
Main,
the native British population at the moment aren't exactly not pussies.
no, I mean, and
Also, I mean, I've had some discussions with people about, you know, it's kind of on this topic, but the idea that, oh, you know, we've had loads of foreigners come here before. We've had loads of immigrants before, and I was like, yeah, they were all invasions though.
yeah,
Um,
they weren't. They didn't like come fleeing because they were
yeah,
defenseless. I mean, they actually, they were the ones that caused people to flee in the first place. I mean,
well, exactly.
like,
Someone, I think they cited the Druids as an example of, you know, I can't remember what the point was, because this is something like in the time of the Druids, loads of Romans came over, and I was like, yeah, how did that go for the Druids?
or
They were
they all amassed on Anglesey, and then the Romans went into Anglesey and basically just butchered and wiped out Druid culture altogether.
well, exactly. That was my point. Is that in this analogy that you come up with, we are the Druids.
Yeah.
She was like, "Oh, are we?" I mean, she was like, "Yeah, but you know that they've got Ireland to have the Celtic mythos on," and I was like, "Yeah, but you're not going to give us an island, are you?"
No. Well, I hope they've realised that the Celts. I mean, I've been seeing a lot of memes going about at the moment saying like, this is what new Celts look like, and it's basically like a Somali lot wearing like robes and such.
Oh yeah, there was the King Arthur.
Yeah, King Arthur. That's yeah. I've seen a lot of memes going about. So I hope these people do realise that Celts were that they are white. Um, because it is obviously like on the surface, they were similar to the evil Anglo-Saxon, evil Saxons, which haunt the progressives' dreams. Um, because I think if you actually look at the, like, I remember someone in chat might be able to find it, but if you look at a map of where the Saxons and where the Celts, because the Celts, like early history of Celts, I believe originate sort of neighboring where the Saxons originated as well, very close together, sort of like northern, western Germany, northern France area. So, um, you know, there may have been closer relations. I guess you could say, but who knows? I mean, it's
Well,
quite
I
hard.
think weren't they more Scandi? Because there's the stereotypical like ginger and blonde complexion, as opposed to
Yeah,
the more Germanic, like darker.
yeah. I mean, with the Germanic one, because I've heard. I mean, there's a lot of mythos again. There's a lot. Charles, when you go like I guess you say like pre-Roman, you go quite heavily, especially when it comes to Northern Europe. You go into like the mythos, like the myths.
Yes, yes.
Um, I mean, there is some that's like this. There's an island in Sweden, um, where they say that all like there's like where the Nords, like the Danes, the Nordic peoples, the Saxons, and all the Germanics and the Swabians. That's where they all originated from, which is probably not entirely correct. I mean, from what I understood, the Saxons sort of come from it was like northwestern Germany.
Yeah, sort of
and
underneath Denmark.
underneath them, and the Franks sort of come from the similar region as well, in that sort of Friesland, sort of probably what's now Holland area, because they bordered the Roman.
Yeah, that they
Roman
invaded.
Empire.
They invaded what's now France and took it over, didn't they?
They invaded France, and they northern. It was like the Roman province of Septimia and everything, and then they took on the Visigoths and such, and of course there's Charlemagne and all that sort of stuff, which is that'll be an interesting stream probably later on in the future. But yeah, I was going to say, talked about decolonization theory, which is just see what more is there anything more that can be said.
So Felix said something about the idea that putting the sort of tribal savage, sort of noble savage shaman on the same level as modern science. That seems to, maybe not modern science, but Renaissance, medieval European science, which you can't really do because
No.
the tribal shaman was wrong, because like it was more spirituality, which you can argue that the science, a lot of the quote unquote scientists were monks.
And listen, any left winger who believes this, I'm quite happy to drill into their skull. I would be up for doing that just to prove them right. I would wholeheartedly agree.
Let the demons out.
Let the demon out. And if you don't do it, it's quite obviously then you are giving into the white science, the white man's view of science, which is very bigoted, and it's built upon the blood of many societies. So again, if you don't follow it, you are you're part of the problem. There's got another one from.
Go on.
I was just saying, got again, Doug Nimitz. I know the Roman Celts were pussies. My point about the Saxons was, if you're going to do this, you should be very careful. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess if I was going to like bring over an army of like base Nigerians, I wouldn't do it like say like 100,000, because that'd be, because then you're asking for trouble. I mean, I would probably sign like I'd probably get to like a deal of let's say if I wanted to say that Black Lives Matter got so out of control in this country, and I would bring in an army of say base Nigerians to sort them out, I would do a deal where basically we give you so much, let's say money, give you like some money or something, or like whatever you need in Nigeria, and you can go there, you can go and deal with the Black Lives Matter lot, and then once it's all sorted, you return home, and we'll give you your payment in due course.
I'd rather just recreate the red coats, to be honest.
Yeah, all that. I mean, just red coats, and live ammunition.
If we're going to decolonize England, then may as well dress the part.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw a while ago. I can't remember who it was. It was one of the, like, the sort of intellectual dark web types. I can't remember why I was watching a podcast that they were on. Might have been Joe Rogan or something like that. And I think I was listening to it in the gym, I think. And one of the guys, he was talking about, he'd had a conversation with some student of his about, I think it was about gender identity.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I think it was. I think it was Gad Saad.
Oh yeah.
He's an evolutionary psychologist. So
yeah,
he was.
he's got some quite good takes.
Yeah, he's quite funny. But he was talking about, so he was having a conversation over dinner with one of his students, and she was saying stuff like, "Oh yeah, because the islands off Japan is like Alicia or something, the sort of island chain above Japan.
Yeah,
Um, there was some ancient tribes there who basically believed in a third gender, or that they had this spiritual. Oh no, maybe it was to do with the fact that they had their actual sex, sort of biological, and then they had a sort of spiritual gender. And she
yeah.
was like, "Well,
I know of the island you're talking about, and I'm aware of the cultural practices because they use like some tattooing of the body to signify the the different, let's say, differences in I guess you could say what is perceived to be gender identity. But yes, sorry, yeah, go on.
yeah." So that she was basically using that as an excuse why we should accept it now.
Okay.
And it's like, yeah, but are you an atheist? That their one was an entirely spiritual sort of connection. So if you're an atheist, then surely you should just dismiss that.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the point. It's like if you're an atheist, okay, and this is the thing: if you're atheist, you can't pick and choose
Yes, I mean atheist seems to be
what
just code for
philosophy.
anti-Christianity.
Yeah, I mean, well, yes. If you're going to say you're going to adopt, again, I imagine that sort of that society. 'Cause I'm just trying to think. I know which islands to talk about, and the Japanese did take it over, and the culture there. Well, again, because the Japanese had the very they had the Shinto Buddhist Shinto society. Um, does that mean you're going to adopt the religious and cultural practices of that that society with the third gender? Are you going to pray actively to their many deities? Are you going to
Well, yeah.
um,
Also, you
yeah?
can just say you can dismiss it out of hand as spiritual bullshit. Like that's just what I'd say. That's not in any way objective. That's just spiritual bullshit. That's not. You can't
Well,
compare
yeah.
that to modern science.
Well, from an atheist point of view, I mean, it would be because, well, if you accept that, then you say, well, okay, what's the problem with Christianity then?
Well, exactly. I mean, Christianity. As far as I'm aware, Christianity mandates the two genders as sons of Adam and daughters of Eve.
Yeah, and and the trouble is, again, Christianity doesn't exactly mandate it because if you, I mean, to put Christianity aside, if you say you take like, let's just take the Roman or the Greek gods, you had feminine and masculine gods, quite evidently one representing men, representing women, and let's just say, gender roles, okay? Because obviously you had your goddess to fertility. Now, obviously, your goddess to fertility wasn't going to be a big burly man with a spear. It's going to be this beautiful goddess with white robes and doves and all that
Yes,
sort of
but
stuff.
she's different to the goddess of love because she's more motherly, I suppose, than a more youthful.
Yeah, she's
Like,
more motherly. She's basically like a MILF, and the goddess of love is basically the like your frat girl, your frat party sort of
yes,
girl. That anything goes.
yeah. I
And
mean, the ancient Greeks and Romans they had a rather more fluid concept of sexuality as well because they obviously it's not the same as gender, but they did have obviously there's the whole thing about homosexuality being accepted, but
it was, yeah. I mean,
it was accepted insofar as it was fine, but you still had a duty to have a family.
yeah. I mean, in the Greek and Roman world, homosexuality wasn't a um. I I think a lot of it was down to class as well. Well, without going into the communist talking points about class, a lot of it was down to your stature in society. Now, if you were um, a sort of well-to-do urbanites, say like in ancient Greece and say Athens, you would be surrounded by um, your homosexual orgies, homosexuality, but also all sorts of, let's say, debauchery. You
Yeah,
would be surrounded by it, and it would be a normal part of society. But what it would do, it wouldn't be like a serious proposition of your intent of love with someone. It would just be there for fun, for pleasure, um, and uh, and I think, as Doug Nimitz just pointed out, homosexuality wasn't accepted within the lower classes. Well, yeah, effectively, it wouldn't have been in your rural stick countries. It wouldn't be acceptable in larger parts of, say, let's say, the Greek world and the Roman world in your rural settings outside of the major
yeah, there are
cities.
plenty of emperors that crack down on degeneracy.
I mean, I
Roman
think
emperors,
Roman emperors. I mean, obviously, I know that
especially within
people.
the city of Rome
Yeah, I
itself. Isn't
mean,
that why?
yeah, I mean. Sorry, go on. Hello. Oh, hello. A sec. I'll just message Joz.
No, I was going to say that I know there were some emperors that kind of cracked down on quote unquote degeneracy. Oh, can you not hear me?
I can now. There was a massive pause. I just couldn't hear. Couldn't hear you. About a few minutes. Oh, P Man's here. Joz is a Joz is a boomer. Um, I well, I think we're both boomers because I uploaded a video, P Man, the other day, and I didn't have any sound. There was no sound, and people in the comments told me there's no sound. But
Okay.
with the Roman Empire, yeah, I mean, I know that people will be quoting Christian Roman emperors because that's like the more obvious one because they did crack down in uh I guess what they would have considered to be pagan rituals. So that would have been um oh, I think Charles is gone. Oh, okay, well, not to worry. So I'm just trying to think with Roman emperors. I mean, hello?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Oh, what happened there? I think my laptop just froze up.
Yeah, you there was a massive pause and then I heard you talking and then I thought I was talking to you and then you suddenly just went and I was like, oh, I think there might have been a bit of a lag
Oh well.
involved, but not because you were saying it was only Roman emperors who cracked down on debauchery.
Yes, I think within the city of Rome itself, there were a few. I can't remember any specific names offhand, but even the pagan ones, not
Yeah,
the Christian ones.
I mean, if you okay, I mean, this is a good example because it wouldn't just be your emperors, but also senators as well who had negative views when it comes to it. And some guys, like, I mean, if you take I mean, take who uh who who Caligula, that's a good one. Now
Yes.
he um he well, he was very pro transgender in many ways.
Well, Nero as well. He was it Nero or Caligula who
No, sorry, I know I mixed up now. No, it was Nero who was very pro transgender.
Yes,
To
yeah.
such an
There was a
extent.
later one as well. L something, who paraded as a woman. I can't. What was his name?
Yes. Let me just have a look. Roman. I know who you mean, and I can't remember because the ones that did all that, they didn't really last long amongst the amongst the imperial regime, because hence why many thought that they
No.
were meant mad.
Elagabalus. Elagabalus, the later one.
Elagabalus, that's it. Yeah, he was he was Roman emperor. I mean, he was Roman emperor for what was it, 4 years?
Yeah, not very long. He was
What
one
a,
of the last ever.
what a fucking noob.
I mean, to be honest,
he came from Syria as well.
Compare him to Aurelian. Aurelian only ruled for 5 years, yet he brought the empire back from the brink and conquered it again.
Yeah, but when you have these like like people like Elagabalus as Roman emperors. I mean, is it any wonder that Roman Empire got to the stage where you needed someone like Aurelian to unite it again? Because I mean, you had your you had that situation where you had Queen was it Queen Zenobia, like in Syria and in the eastern part, and then you had like you had like that Roman general in what I think was it Britain, who like did like the sort of like was it Gallic Empire, like, it's called, the historians called it like the Gallic Empire or something like that. So there was, and so basically three-way civil war basically.
He was allied with the Franks, I think, at the time. Didn't he have some?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, and of course Aurelian spent his entire time conquering, but also putting down any more further revolts, and then of course he was assassinated.
His achievements in 5 years were unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, my personal favorite Roman emperor has to be. I think for me it's tied between Aurelian and Theodosius the Great, and Aurelian is because number one, he was pure military might of your Roman Empire.
He had a stick golden mask and praised the sun.
Yeah, I mean, he was the one that introduced the Roman was it Sol Invictus to the Pantheon, if I remember correctly. He was one that actually introduced it as a way of like a unifying force for the empire, which I know that a lot of
it did kind of pave the way for Christianity, though.
Yeah, because the more like nutty conspiracy theorists say, "Oh, there it is, the smoking gun proved Christianity is just it was all created by the Roman Emperor." No, it wasn't. It wasn't, because you had Christians at the time, and Christianity, and unironically, the Christians' population grew during the crisis of the third century, which it was called. But also you had very other like cults. You had like the Mithras cult. You had the Mantian cult.
Was a big one.
Yeah, you had quite a long list of cults that grew during this sort of troubled, decentralized plan. And also, I think you also at the same time it coincided with the plague that swept across the Roman Empire as well.
Yeah.
So I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on, a lot of mass changes to society. I just want to go back to Felix just put in the chat, search Science Must Fall on YouTube, an amazing display of insanity about decolonizer science and shaman magic, only 5 minutes. Right, I tell you what, probably got 5 minutes just to do that.
Okay, yeah, I think we've strayed kind of far from the Spanish Empire, but
what we I mean, on the British Empire, we ended up talking about the Atlantic slave, the transatlantic slave trade, and then we ended up talking about the welfare state. So it's all connected. It's all connected.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, we did quite a large segment on the Aztecs, so we'll take that as a win. Staying on topic.
I mean, to be fair, we've done. I mean, I think we've done quite well. We talked about Columbus. So what's it? Science Must Fall. Okay, I've got it up here. If I will play it to the stream. Let me just bring it up on. Let me just bring it up.
Science Must Fall triggers me in so many ways.
So this is 2016, and I think I've seen this one before. But is it in Australia or somewhere like that, or is it? No, South Africa. Okay, South Africa. Okay, that makes sense. So let's play it.
I'm not sure we've got any sound.
Is there any sound coming through?
No, I can see the subtitles, but I can't hear any sound. Is it playing out of your speakers rather than onto the stream?
Yeah, it's playing out my speakers.
Oh, this is. Oh no. Oh, for fuck's sake.
Unlimited power. Fucking lightning coming.
So you can explain that scientifically because it's something that happens.
So
what?
I mean, they're just arguing that like fucking lightning. You can shoot lightning out of your out of your hands.
It seems like they're arguing that the shaman can get somebody struck by lightning.
Yeah. And okay, so all your chemists, all your biology and physics students, professors, no, leave the classroom. Go
my degree was theoretical physics, so this is annoying me on so many levels.
Yeah, so you need to get number one, just get rid of all the books, scratch it out from history. Go to this sacred site and learn the ways of the of black magic, and you'll be able to shoot lightning out of your hands.
I will literally sit her down in a room with a whiteboard and explain lightning to her if she wants.
I mean, if she could do it, I'd be up for it. But okay. I will just finish watching this because this is too crazy.
So they're trying to find a person to ask a question.
I know there was a man who just shouted out, "That's not true," and they've sort of all lost their shit because he's just said,
right.
He basically just said, "Well, yes, you can't shoot lightning out of your hands," and he's just obviously, I imagine what any rational person in the room would say, "Okay, that's not true," and there's like, "What? No, it is true. I've seen it. I've seen it on TV. I've seen it on Star Wars."
Let's test it. Let's have a reproducible test. See if you can add to the scientific lexicon on it. Let's have control experiment. See if your hypothesis is right. Let's get some data on it. Like, you can't just say it.
No, and I mean, all I can say is prove it. Go out there with some electronic rods or whatever, and if you can conduct electricity, I want to see it.
Yeah, let's have a key and a kite moment.
Yeah. uh, I say that would be the most that'd be the most entertaining snuff film out there. It was
Christ.
okay. I'll carry
I
on
mean,
watching.
honestly, as soon as we move to Mars,
Yeah.
I'm happier. I saw a bit of a racist meme going around. When they had the SpaceX launches a month or so ago, they
Yeah.
had a picture of what white people are doing, and it's the guys in their suits in the spaceship, like giving a thumbs up to the camera, and it's what black people are doing, and there's like pictures of people rioting and stealing shit from shops.
I mean, but that's what I mean. This the thing, because I mean, all the people that claim to be on the side of the minorities are basically inadvertently. Well, I say inadvertently. I mean, they're not doing it inadvertently. They're actively trying to make them look like animals. I mean, that's the. I mean, if you like take the Democrats in America, um, for me, I mean, they're the party that created the Ku Klux Klan. For me, they're just still carrying on the legacy. They want to make black people look like animals. I tell you what, all the social media, all the coverage has done nothing to help the stereotype of that, and that's why I think you have people, a lot of people like Kanye West, and you got Jesse Lee Peterson and such, and the sort of more based people who are basically saying, no, stop playing into the democratic, plantation narrative. And
Yeah, I mean they're trying to hold back the ocean there. They are such a small minority within that community.
I know it's just such a shame.
More power to them.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you what, I mean, Jesse Lee Peterson is an absolute godsend for them, for that community. Um,
Beta, beta.
yeah. Uh, I'll just see what we'll just carry on with this video.
They're disrespecting the sacredness of this place. They're going to say that about burning cathedrals, are they?
Well, yeah, but yeah, exactly. Yeah, will they by heck? But the trouble is, the guy just apologized just now. He just said, I think he just said sorry.
Yeah, I
So
saw that on the captions.
I,
For fuck's sake.
oh god, man, no, never apologize. Never apologize to these people. You can never do it, because even if you're, I mean, dare I say, even if you're wrong, you can never apologize, because for them, they're not interested in learning or getting one perspective. They're just interested about controlling power over you. And when you apologize, is that's what you're giving. You're giving them some element of power over you. So I mean, God, he really shouldn't apologize. Should have just stuck to his guns with that. That
Yeah.
was disappointing. I was hoping he'd be like the one based voice in the room, just saying, "Listen, you guys are retarded, and while this is entertaining, I'm going to go find a real science classroom and probably get to work."
Yeah. Yeah. It's also.
Right.
What their opinions, so long as that they agree with you.
Yeah, basically.
The rules of engagement. What engagement? The rules of engagement is there is no engagement.
Yeah. Well, in basically engagement is sit down, Whitey, because we're going to educate you. It is
Oh, I,
basically
I
the
assumed it. I assumed it was a black guy. To be honest, not that we saw it.
not well. I see. I think it's a white guy, because I've lived with some boars, and he sounded like a bit of a bore. But I could be wrong. I could be wrong indeed. I'm just assuming that. But
I mean, yeah, this
yeah,
is in South Africa, right?
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I didn't hear the voice or anything, so you're probably right.
I was just,
My mental picture was that it was a black guy.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. Again, I'm just assuming as well that because it sounded
Not that it shouldn't matter.
no. I mean, to be honest, there's a white girl on the panel there, and obviously, obviously, I imagine she's on board with
Of
it.
course, it's a white girl, not a white guy.
Yeah, interesting that. Was it as the Sargon says, really gets noggin jogging uh, when it comes to that. The deeper meaning behind that. But I mean, obviously, whoever it was, he apologized, and he just apologized a second time. Very, very sorry. I'm very. It's like I guess where you draw back to Spanish, like the Inquisition. You know, like those you get sort of humiliated, publicly humiliated to such a stage where you're forced to apologize, but your apology is hollow. But they don't care that your apology is hollow. They just want that control over you. Um, so they know those women on there. I mean, look at the one in the yellow jumper there. She's got her hands are up against her face, and she's doing that because she wants to say something. Because she's angry because she knows that she knows the chap who's defied her thinks that she knows that he's not really sorry. He still thinks that they're full of shit. And maybe deep down they know they're full of shit. I don't know.
Well, it's just so ideological that, like, they I guess on some level, they must be aware of the difference between sort of physical reality and the realm of ideas, right?
Well, one would think so, but I mean, at the same time, I don't know because, I mean, I mean, you can be indoctrinated to do anything and think anything, no matter how outlandish it can be. Um, I mean, the one in the jumper who's in the grey in the shirt who's standing up there lecturing everybody. She looks like she's a full-on convert believer to. In fact, I mean, I don't know if this is her idea. I don't know whose idea this is. To what's it? Science must fall, and we create our own science around black witchcraft or whatever the hell.
I don't think they understand what science is.
Well, I think for them, science is a what is it? Science is a European colonizer construct. So, and it's like anything that comes from the people that conquered us, all of it must go. So that would be like us getting rid of roads.
Well,
People
it's
living
not
in
even that. It's they probably, I guess they probably genuinely see, because I guess in a tribal society, the religious leaders and the say shaman or whatever probably take the same role that university people play in our lives, university professors, and that, like, it's the same at a very abstract level, a very same role within society,
yes, I would say so.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
So I suppose from the point of view of who is disseminating the knowledge of the population, the difference is that science is more of a method of understanding rather than sort of pure truth.
yes,
You know, the scientific method is more about evolutionary incremental changes towards a better approximation of reality. It's
yeah.
not about here is the truth, believe it, or else.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think there is a element of. I mean, I'd like to know if. I mean, I'd like to know because I mean, this is old. It's like 2016, so I'd like to know. Hang on a sec. I'll just be back in two ticks.
I'm sure. I'll be entertaining for a bit. It honestly says a lot about RPM if his approval rating is the highest among millennials. Bloody hell, is that true? I mean, to be fair, I have heard a few people about my age, although I guess I'm technically not a millennial, who would say that they've converted to supporting him, but that's only because he's more left wing for a conservative. I wouldn't say that's because they are switching to his side. He's more switching to their side.
Hello again.
You back?
Yeah, I'm back. Yeah. Yeah, it was just me, mid dog. I've got to take him for a walk soon.
Okay.
He's getting agitated. Well, we'll just watch the rest of this video. This YouTube clip.
She's not in the science faculty.
That's correct.
What? If you start hearing a thudding in the background, it's me bashing my head against the wall.
Sorry.
I said if you start hearing a thudding, then it's me bashing my head against
Oh,
the wall.
okay. Okay, I'll bear that in mind.
No, that's not what it's fucking saying about Newton. Ah. Ah. I will literally. I said I'll sit her down with a whiteboard and explain to her how it works if she wants, and how we know that it works. I love that you still got the word genocide just on the screen.
It's staying on the screen.
You got a picture of people being anti-Western science, and you just got genocide underneath.
Okay, that's enough of that cancerous shit.
I might have to go and have a drink after that.
Right, so I probably will sum this all up. So we sum this up. Yes, that's probably
Lies.
how I would. Yeah, that's probably how I would sum it up.
Love it.
This is the problem. That is the problem that we face at this moment in time.
I can't believe I'm having to defend science to an atheist society.
I mean, it's strange. I don't. I mean, my question would be, okay, if all of it's fake, then I need you to prove it to me that it's all that all of it has no bearing and is completely wrong and must fall. Okay, I want you to carry out examples to me.
If you find say you have a theory that works for so within certain boundaries, say, and you've got loads of evidence that shows that your theory works within those boundaries.
Yeah.
Let's call that modern science. If somebody else comes, so we're taken her point of view that modern science is only correct from a Western perspective. If you come in with another point of view, with another expansion of the realms over which this theory should work, if you want to modify this theory or have something else that's completely new and that should work within sort of greater boundaries, within broader boundaries, so you're going from a special theory to a general theory, let's say.
Yeah.
You have to also prove that your new theory works for every single situation in which the old theory worked. So your new theory must explain every single phenomenon that was previously explained correctly and has evidence for. It must predict the same results that you've already got evidence for, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, but that goes back to what she was saying, is, their own. Okay, let's just go along their line of thought. One would imagine that they would carry out the same experiments. Let's just say that Newton, or the same, they would have their own same discovery of Newton, but what they would do is they would replace Newton, but with their own person, even though it wasn't like they discovered it; it was already discovered before. But the problem is, I think the problem is it's who discovered it. That's what I'm getting from here. Is their ultimate problem is that not the fact it was discovered and that's an accepted truth, but for them it's the people who discovered it, and that's why it cannot be trusted, and we need to, we need to relook at it again, sort of attitude that I'm getting from
She
this.
seems to be taking the story of Newton sitting under a tree as a little bit literal. It was.
Yeah, I
It
mean, I
wasn't
know
the fact
that.
that it wasn't the fact that
I
he saw the apple fall and thought, things must fall down. Let me see if I can explain that. It was the link between things falling down and the orbit of the moon that was really what got him thinking. Like the fact that he could then unify those two things as the same force. That's what was the groundbreaking part. Not saying, oh, things fall when I drop them. It was the fact that he expanded it into a sort of universal idea about the motion of the heavens.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's not. Well, she literally said she's not in the science faculty. She hasn't had more than a high school education in science. She has no idea what she's fucking talking about.
No. And it again, I mean, obviously that there is a problem within Western universities, and evidently a South African university as well, where these sort of debates, um, it's acceptable. Now, I know that you would have your people on the one side will say, well, yeah, freedom of speech means that you can say outlandish rubbish, but the point is, when you have a panel of ideologues like everyone who was sitting there, and you have that
But
one
this stuff
person
is organized by some society or by the university. If it's the
yeah,
university organizing it, then it's the students' fees that are going towards it. They will
yeah,
have. They will.
yeah,
The university needs to pick and choose what it uses to fit funds on. There's an opportunity cost there. It will have not put on some other event because it put on that event. That's not a question of freedom of speech. It's a
no, no,
question
but
of where it allocates its funds.
I was saying that if someone was to, I mean, you obviously you have the right to argue all sorts of crazy theories, but the point is, as long as there's somebody there who can disagree, but the point is, the one person who disagreed in
Yes.
that was shouted down and forced to apologize. Now, I would like to know. Let's just say he didn't apologize and said, "No, I'm sticking to my guns. You're all talking out your backsides." What would have happened? Now, either they would have just shouted and screamed at him to get out, um, more likely. But we know these progressive types and what they're capable of, and maybe they would have resorted physically, because it depends how they would have taken it.
Well, at the end of the day, if he's not going to leave willingly, then they have no other choice.
Yeah.
Like,
So
what they're going
yeah.
to laughing at Felix's comments. Broke Newtonian physics is wrong. Woke Newton was black.
Well, according to the Black Hebrewites, I mean, everyone in England in that time period was black. I mean, bloody King
God,
James was black. I mean,
I saw
but that
I saw it was it Dominique Samuels, the Prosecco Tory, who I think she was part of Turning Point UK initially, but she
yeah,
posted a thread a while ago going through loads of black people in England in like medieval times, saying, "See, we've always had them here," and I was just like, "Yeah, like six. Like, what are you talking about?"
yeah, six if that, and they weren't all at the same time as well. They didn't like all know each other
No,
either.
there was just because there was a trumpeter in Henry VIII's court, like that doesn't mean anything.
Mozart was
But
black. Saffron, yeah,
so I've heard.
he had the rhythm. Hence, we know this as a fact. Um, okay, on that note, I've got to go now. So, but thank you for joining
Okay,
me today, Joz.
no
And
worries. I'll have to get you on my stream at some point.
that's all right. And I'll just want to shout out, hello, Makuta Taradax. You've I think you said you came in after having like a 10-minute run or something. So I hope you enjoyed it. And what do you put on here about the Prime Minister? Honestly, says a lot about our PM. If his approval rating is almost high amongst millennials. Yes, I don't know what he's doing at the moment. He seems to be a bit all over the place. I don't know.
Well, he's just being a leftist, isn't he? Like,
He is. I mean,
that's why his approval's gone up among people who normally would be Labour supporters, because he's just being them.
I know, but Boris, I'm going to tell you a little secret. The Guardian voters aren't going to fucking vote for you. They're not going to vote for you, mate. Just
No.
so, but I mean, I've had this rant before previously on other streams about it, but yeah, they're not going to vote for you. So why bother? But anyway, thank you very much all for joining. And I will see you all later. Thank you, Giles. I'll see you later. Bye.